Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today in defense of net neutrality. In April, the House of Representatives took an important step in passing the Save the Internet Act, legislation that would overturn the Trump administration's Federal Communication Commission wrong-headed decision and restore net neutrality protections. Another way of saying net neutrality is non-discrimination online. That's what it is. It's the principles of non-discrimination online, so that large companies just can't discriminate against smaller voices, smaller companies, startups. In the Senate, we have already successfully passed the same proposal last year. In April of 2018, my Congressional Review Act resolution passed in the Senate in a bipartisan vote of 52 to 47. April 2018, bipartisan. We debated net neutrality, and the Senate decided to join the majority of Americans and support a free and open internet. In that vote, we sent a message to President Trump about what that means: an internet free of corporate control and open to all who want to communicate, engage, and innovate. We made clear that Congress won't fall for President Trump's special interest agenda and his broadband baron allies who just want to block, slow down, or discriminate against content online just to charge Americans more on their cable bills. Unfortunately, the rules for the Congressional Review Act that allow just 30 senators to force the majority to schedule a vote is not an option in this Congress. So instead, on this, the one-year anniversary of President Trump's net neutrality repeal going into effect, we will call for an immediate vote on the Save the Internet Act. Unfortunately, our Republican colleagues are failing to listen to the voices of their constituents and plan to block the vote from happening. Let's be clear. Net neutrality is just another way in which the Republican Party refuses to side with the ordinary people in our country. Regular families, small businesses, startup software companies, how do they get access to the internet in a way in which they cannot feel that corporate pressure restricting their ability to use this incredible invention to further the democratization of access to opportunity, or at the same time to innovate in a way which continues to change not only our own country but our own world. We can't let big companies discriminate against individual consumers. We can't let big companies stifle speech. Once you pay your monthly internet service bill, you can go anywhere you want on the internet without your provider slowing down or blocking your path to a website of your choosing. This is a fight, and it's a fight for innovation, for entrepreneurialism, for the American economy, a fight for free speech, the cornerstone of our democracy, a fight for the most powerful platform for commerce and communications in the history of the planet. The Save the Internet Act does exactly what the American people want. It restores the rules that ensure families aren't subject to higher prices, slower internet speeds, and even blocked websites because the big broadband providers want to pump up their profits. Under Senator McConnell's leadership, the Republicans are trying to bury this bill in a legislative graveyard. Instead of acting on legislation, which again passed the Senate a year ago, it just passed in the House in April of this year. Leader McConnell has been doing little but confirming unqualified extreme right nominees for the Trump administration. Just listen to the bills that the Senate Republicans refuse to act on. The Violence Against Women Act. No votes out here on the Senate floor. Voting and Democracy Reform. No votes out here on the Senate floor. Gun and background checks. Passed the House. No vote here in the Senate. Paycheck fairness, the Paris Climate Agreement. No, no, no. But the Senate Majority Leader and his Republican colleagues can keep populating the legislative graveyard at their political peril. Because this is the agenda which the American people want to see the Senate debating, and they want to see these laws put on the books to protect families in our country. And that's because the issues they are blocking are enormously popular, most with strong bipartisan support. Take net neutrality. 86% of Americans do not approve of the Federal Communications Commission action to repeal net neutrality rules, including 82% of Republicans. But we're not going to have a vote out here on the Senate floor. On background checks for gun purchases, 97% of Americans support requiring background checks for all gun buyers. But we're not going to have a vote out here on the Senate floor. And on staying in the Paris Climate Agreement, nearly 70% of registered voters believe that the United States should keep its promise and stay in that historic agreement to combat climate change. But the Republicans will not allow us to even have a vote on that out here on the Senate floor. The only place where these issues don't have Republican support is in Senator McConnell's office. Across the country, huge bipartisan numbers on each and every one of those issues. It's time we do right by the American people. And we can start with the Save the Internet Act and protect the Internet as we know it. More than 100 outside advocacy organizations wrote to Senate leadership today urging a vote on the net neutrality legislation. They want action now, and Democrats are committed to fighting on their behalf. I am joined today by some of our greatest fighters for net neutrality here in the Senate and across our country. The ranking member of the Commerce Committee, Maria Cantwell from Washington State, will be out here in a few minutes. But now I'm joined by Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon. Senator Wyden and I introduced net neutrality legislation 15 years ago in the House and in the Senate. And nobody understands this issue better than Senator Wyden does. And partnering with Senator Cantwell, we are going to continue this battle. And whether it's on the floor of the Senate, in the House, whether it's in the courts, we will not stop fighting until net neutrality is restored. So from my perspective, right from the very beginning, Senator Wyden and I have been on the right side of history. We've been fighting for an issue which has overwhelming public support, and we're not going to give up until we have won this fight. So at this point, I would like, Mr. President, to yield back the balance of my time.